Alright, so today we're going to talk about algebraic expressions. Some vocabulary you need to know are evaluate, which means to substitute a number for each variable in the expression, then simplify using the order of operations. A term, which is a number or variable, or the product of a number and one or more variables. A coefficient, which is the numerical factor of a term. The constant term, which is a quantity whose value does not change. And like terms, which have the same variables raised to the same power. So the question I have for you is, can you write an algebraic expression with two terms and one negative variable coefficient? So here we go. Let's get my pen. So it says, can you write an algebraic expression with two terms? Right? So two terms could simply be an x and a y. Those are two terms. And one negative variable coefficient. So I can make one negative by simply just doing -2. That right there makes that negative. So x minus 2y. There you go. And you can do any form like that. You could have done 2x minus 3y. You could use a and b. All those are terms with letters or numbers. You could have made it 2xy minus 3z or something like that. Same concept. Alright, so let's talk about converting words to expressions. So in example 1, we're going to write an algebraic expression for each phrase. It says the difference of 7 and 4. We need to realize that difference here means to subtract. Right? And is where the subtraction sign will go. So this is simply going to be 7 minus 4, also known as the difference of 7 and 4. The product means to multiply, and the and is where it goes. So this is simply just going to be 3. Since I'm already going to use an x, I'm actually going to use the dot to indicate multiplication, so 3 times x. You could have also done just 3x, because a number next to a letter also indicates multiplication. The number y increased by 2. You need to realize that increased by is adding. So this is just y plus 2. The quotient, which means to divide, is simply just going to be 48 divided by 3. Also, how you could write this, you can make this a fraction. 48 over 3, which you gotta realize that the little bar right here also means division. Alright, so let's move on. The number n is doubled, then decreased by 1. So doubled means to multiply by 2. So the number n is doubled, so that'd be like 2n, which means 2 times n, and decreased by, which means subtraction. So that'd be decreased by 1. Right, 5 less than w, so realize that less than means to subtract. Hold on, the kicker is this word than makes everything go backwards. So instead of 5 minus w, because of the word than, it's now going to be w minus 5. So that's the only thing that's a little complicated in that you're just translating words into symbols and numbers and letters. Okay, so this one is 2 times the sum of a and b. So the sum means to add, and the and is where it goes. We know this is going to be a plus b, but it says 2 times the sum. So this is going to be 2 times the sum. So whatever this ends up being, I'm then going to multiply that result by 2. Since I don't know what these values are, order operations tells me I need to do it first before I actually multiply 2. And anytime throughout this thing, if you want to pause to see if you can do something before I do it, by all means, that would be a good idea as well. Alright, so here we go. We get the inverse of a number increased by its absolute value. So the inverse, remember the inverse is like the word opposite, which means it becomes a negative or vice versa. So a number is, so the inverse of the number, so if let's say the number is x, then that number then becomes negative x. Alright, and then it says increase by, again, increase by means to add. So that'd be plus its absolute value. So the absolute value, remember, are the bars. So that's going to be the absolute value of whatever that number ends up being. Alright, the next one, the absolute value of the difference of two numbers. So we got the absolute value, so we got our two bars here, of the difference, which means to subtract two numbers. So we don't know what those numbers are, so I'm just going to let it be x and y. The difference goes there. So the difference of two numbers, so x minus y, except for y minus x, it doesn't matter. J here says the inverse. So the inverse, we now know that there's going to be a negative of the opposite. Again, inverse means negative. Of the absolute, sorry, not opposite. The absolute, so I know I got bars coming. Of the value, so I know there's a value in here. Of twice some number. Alright, so twice just means times 2, so that would just be 2x, and then just close your bars. And make sure you make them so they don't look like ones. Make them long, make them tall. I bold them out a lot. Step out. Okay. So let's move on. So converting expressions to words. So example 2 says write a verbal expression for each algebraic expression. So now we got this. We're going to go another word. So you could say something like, so we know this is minus, so we could say something like the difference of, oh, we have those in words. You can't write out the number. Of 5 times a number and 1. There's another way you could have done this. You could have said 1 less than 5 times the number. And as long as you're getting your point across. So this right here could be the sum of 2 or twice or double. So the sum of 2 times a number and 3. Alrighty, so this one's kind of a tricky one. But this deals with quotient. So let's see. Well, this is being divided by 2, which is almost like taking the half of something. Okay, so we could actually say this is half of the sum of a number and 7. Or something like that. Just say something like maybe the quotient of the sum of x plus 7 and 2, could have wrote something like that as well, or anything like that. As long as what you say can reverse back into what you started with. Right, so let's look at some more. So this is, so that's parentheses means multiplication, so this would be 3 times the sum of a number and 8. Okay, so again, because of that, we have to take the sum first and then multiply by 3. Alright, so here's one we haven't really seen, but we see this negative. So we could say the inverse, or maybe the opposite. We're kind of familiar more with that one. Doesn't really matter. So the inverse or the opposite of 6. And this little guy right here is a squared. Right, so that's what we'll do. So of 6 squared. Right. I think this one's kind of a little bit different because the square is now outside the parentheses. So now this, instead of this is being the opposite of 6 squared, this is actually now going to be a negative 6 squared. So since the negative is inside the parentheses, it actually gets applied by the 2. So this is actually going to be negative 6 squared. Alright, and then when you get done with this, make sure you watch the other video, and then don't forget to post a comment or question in the discussion board.